It's spring. And as the Red River thaws in Winnipeg, ugly truths are exposed. Just last year, 2 girls were dumped here. 1 killed, 1 left for dead. Both Aboriginal, both crimes so similar to another one over a decade ago. Felicia Solomon was only 16 when she went missing in 2003. From this river, police fished out her arm and thigh. That's all.
I always think how she suffered before her last breath. That was hard.
Felicia's story, like so many murdered and missing, begins in a community far from this icy river. 12 years, almost to the day after Felicia disappeared, I'm on my way to her home in northern Manitoba with a rare invitation to witness her memorial. I want to know, who was Felicia Solomon? And as they wait and wait for answers, how do the people of Norway House First Nation cope?
Getting up and saying my prayer, and the first person I thought of was Felicia, of course.
This may be the first time Darlene Osborne and her family are speaking so openly about Felicia's murder. But the cooking, baking of Felicia's favorite foods was for a ceremony held year after year, whether in Winnipeg or Norway House, to feed her spirit.
It should be done soon, so this is the one that...
Why keep doing it?
This is my responsibility as a mother and a grandmother. I have to remember her, every day, and I have to remember the women that are going through a lot with the families. A lot of our families are become very dysfunctional. Yeah.
Amongst her family, Darlene is the glue that binds. She's also a band counselor.
Hello.
Add to that, relentless advocate for justice for Felicia, her granddaughter.
We'll be there in about 10 minutes or so.
Norway House was home for Felicia growing up. A place proud of its traditions, but fragile, with many stuck in cycles of addiction and violence. When her parents divorced, her mother was desperate for something new. They headed for a fresh start in the big city, Winnipeg.
This is the one I was telling you about when we got ready for Christmas.
Her mother, Matilda, remembers Felicia as a teenager as funny, a storyteller.
Her favorite number, like, my name is Felicia and I'm 16 years old. She was always writing. July 20. And she used to talk about her day, how she felt and everything. Every time she finished writing a letter, she always wrote peace. That was her signature.
Peace can be elusive in this rough neighborhood in Winnipeg where they lived, where drugs and sex are sold on every corner. Felicia attended this school, not the kind to cut class. On that day in March 2003, Felicia left school, was supposed to stop by her boyfriend's, then come home, but she didn't. She was last seen here, a short walk from her house.
When she didn't come home that night, that's when I phoned missing persons, but they said they can't do anything about it till it's 24 hours, like over 24 hours.
Darlene and her husband John made a beeline for the city. They made missing persons posters and began combing Winnipeg's streets.
Didn't know where to look. Didn't know where to start. Same time, very scary, uncertain, But we always had hope.
At all hours of the night, we would go driving. We would stop every time we seen young girls going by, or even in the buses. We used to look for her all over the place.
Over a week after she disappeared, 2 officers finally arrived to interview Matilda. It didn't go well.
He was just laughing when I told him. He said, and I just didn't feel like talking to them. I said, she's missing, I don't know where she is. And one of them was very helpful, writing down and all that stuff. And one of them was laughing. I didn't feel good about that.
There were reports she was connected to gangs, drugs, the sex trade. All untrue, says her family, who kept searching for 2 months alone until police finally told the public Felicia was missing.
Do you think the fact that Felicia was Native had anything to do with some of those misunderstandings?
Back then, yeah. Maybe still today. And they're supposed to treat everybody equal.
3 months after Felicia disappeared, a gruesome discovery at the Alexander Docks on the Red River. Not long after, police were knocking at Matilda's door.
And he said, Matilda, you gotta sit down for this. He said, so I sat down. And they said, those, the body parts were found in the river. There was only 2 pieces of her. And that's when I went in shock, like, this is only a dream.
It was as if somebody stabbed me in my heart. And I always think of Felicia, how it must have been really hard, screaming for help.
So they gathered at the river's edge, pleading for the killer to be found.
We're hoping that whoever's responsible for this will be caught.
12 years later, the case is still unsolved. And it is the very same river where people gathered last year for Tina Fontaine, 15 years old, reported missing, no manhunt, police indifference, her body discovered in the river. Months later, Rennell Harper, 16 years old, sexually assaulted, beaten, dumped in the river. So similar to Tina's case, except Rennell survived. All so horribly familiar to Felicia's family.
I just broke down and said, that's the same place. That's the same place where they found Felicia. And my heart went for the family because we know the pain, what they went through, because we went through the same thing.
Darlene Osborne is still coping with that pain, but something drives her to keep Felicia's memory alive.
I'm the organizer, I'm the coordinator, I'm the promoter, I'm the boss. Oh boy.
For this year's memorial, she pulls together an entire community.
Oh, that's awesome.
These fishermen were out all night catching Felicia's favorite, pickerel.
She loved to eat pickerel. So that's why we made a lot of effort for these guys to go and ice fish. So
At the community hall, preparations are in full swing.
we'll need a table here.
Every
just
table
put
a
these here.
reminder of her favorite colors,
Now we're starting
pink
to roll.
and baby blue. And a special blanket that represents Felicia and even more lives lost.
The 3 stars represents the girls that we lost. So there's 3 stolen sisters that were taken away from us at a very early age. And, we just want to remember them.
3 plus 1 equals a disproportionate amount of grief for a small community. As much as it's about one family refusing to forget, struggling to heal, Felicia's memorial has become about much more, because she's not the only missing or murdered young woman from Norway House. The community has, over the years, watched the same grim story unfold. Their young women leaving for the city, ending up poster girls and case files. It began with Helen Betty Osborne. Like Felicia, she was in her teens when she left Norway House to go to school. In 1971, she was abducted, stabbed to death. 4 men were implicated, but it took 16 years for a conviction. Racism, police inaction were blamed, prompting an inquiry into Aboriginal justice.
To investigate circumstances surrounding the Helen Betty Osborne murder case.
If it was a white girl who was got killed, would they have done something?
Lessons learned were supposed to prompt change.
They hope the release of the report today will mark the final chapter in what's been a very painful experience.
But what changed? 2 of her cousins joined Helen Betty as statistics. Felicia's death in 2003, then 21-year-old Claudette Osborne went missing in 2008. She hasn't been heard from since. Then, like a broken record, a recurring nightmare, in 2009, 18-year-old Hillary Wilson, murdered. No arrest in her case either.
We're talking about four girls in the community, you know. That's a lot, you know, and...
Claudette's sister, Bernadette Smith, was behind last year's volunteer effort to drag the red. Families searching on their own for missing and murdered.
Okay, hang on to him. Yeah, we're good.
She still remembers when Claudette went missing, how police didn't respond.
We knew where she was last seen and we wanted to search, and we ended up having to do it. And we were so frustrated with the police and angry at that point because it was like they weren't doing anything. And it took them 10 days to even respond to my sister's case.
This year, volunteers are gearing up to drag again. And again, police have declined to join in. When we come back, a plea for justice, a police response.
I don't believe it's based on racism.
"12 years after 16-year-old Felicia Solomon went missing, the people of Norway House gather to sing an honor song for the young women like her who never came home. Darlene Osborne, Felicia's grandmother, is first to speak.
So there is never a closer to Felicia. We're looking for the person to come forward, whoever did this to Felicia.
Absent politicians and police committing to help women and families, the community looks into a mirror at its own hard truths. Whether a message from the chief aimed at First Nations leaders.
And if we don't say anything, if we don't talk about it, then it may just be looked upon as something that's normal, something that
to women, asking women to break their own cycles of addiction.
We don't have to be in that negative side of life of using or alcohol abuse or those kinds of things.
Or men, asking Aboriginal men to respect women.
It's time for us to start taking back our role, our traditional role that we had as leaders and as caregivers and as protectors of our women.
Toward the end, John gets up to speak in Cree about accompanying his wife Darlene to rallies to stop violence against women. Often the only man there, and it's not easy for him. Because as strong as they are today as a couple, it wasn't always so. John used to abuse alcohol and hit Darlene. He recalls a conversation with his father that shames him to this day.
And looking at me in the face And then she said, I never hit your mom. I respect your mom because she bare me children, and I broke down because I did the opposite.
Darlene appreciates his bravery to admit what other men won't and to change.
We made mistakes in the past, and we can't dwell on that. Main thing in our relationship is forgiveness and, love and support for each other.
Instead of love and support, the stories of so many missing and murdered are woven of common threads. Police investigations slow off the mark. Public who didn't care. Families fending for themselves. Criticisms police have heard repeatedly, as well as accusations of discrimination in the way they treat cases.
I don't believe it's based on racism. I think as an investigation is reported to the police or a crime is reported to the police, we react equally to both. It has no racist component to it.
RCMP Sergeant Rob Lawson says all 3 unsolved cases from Norway House are being investigated by Project Devote, the special 18-officer unit tasked with homicides and missing persons, but can't share any details about Felicia's case.
It is hard to establish timelines for these people, and a delay in reporting or an unspecific timeline does make the investigations more difficult.
So, the investigation drags on.
My cousin was Felicia Solomon.
Felicia was my granddaughter.
As families such as Felicia's find courage to voice their grief.
I wanted to know if my daughter was alive or was she still here?
There's some measure of healing, but no closure. Not when Felicia's killer is still out there. What will it take for the next generation of girls from Norway House to actually live in peace?
People have to understand that we will never forget our daughters or granddaughters, and that we have to say, okay, women, we have to stop violence against women. And we have to keep doing that over and over again.
Over and over again, because not enough of us are listening as fully as we can be to story after story of daughters who never came home. Duncan McCue, CBC News, Norway House, Manitoba.